The warning highlights growing tensions in the world's largest oil-exporting region between Sunni-ruled Arab countries and non-Arab Shiite power Iran, just across Gulf waters. Bahrain has withdrawn its top diplomats from Iran in a protest over the Islamic Republic's criticism of last week's crackdown on mainly Shiite protesters in the island kingdom. The crackdown has also drawn sympathy protests in countries with Shiite populations, including Lebanon, where Hezbollah leader Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah criticized Arab states for backing Bahrain's rulers while supporting the rebels in Libya. Due to the threats and interference that Bahrain has faced from terrorist elements, it warns and advises its nationals not to travel to Lebanon because of the dangers they may face that may affect their safety, and it advises nationals in Lebanon to leave immediately, the foreign ministry said in a statement. The ferocity of the crackdown, which banned protests, imposed martial law, and called in forces from Bahrain's fellow Sunni-ruled neighbors, has stunned its majority Shiite. More than 60% of Bahrainis are Shiite, and most are campaigning for a constitutional monarchy, but calls by hardliners for the overthrow of the monarchy have alarmed Sunnis, who fear the unrest serves Iran. Iran, which supports Shiite groups in Iraq and Lebanon, has complained to the United Nations and asked neighbors to join it in urging Saudi Arabia to withdraw forces from Bahrain. Turkish Foreign Minister Ahmet Davutoglu, in a joint news conference in Ankara Tuesday with Bahrain's foreign minister, said, "It is very important that the civilian population is protected, and that the civilian population and security forces do not confront one another. A sectarian clash would harm the intense process of change in the region." He said the intervention of foreign forces in Bahrain must be temporary. Bahrain's foreign minister Sheikh Khaled bin Ahmed Al Khalifa said, "Foreign forces are only there to protect state organs, and would be there for a very limited time." In London, Saudi Foreign Minister Prince Saud Al Faisal discussed the situation in Bahrain with British Prime Minister David Cameron. Cameron's office said. It said Britain supported political dialogue that the Bahraini government says it is seeking to establish and encouraged all parties to take part in those talks. Cameron said Bahrain's approach needed to be based on the principle of reform to address the legitimate aspirations of the people of Bahrain. Bahrain complained to the Arab-set broadcaster Sunday over abuse and incitement on Iran's Arabic-language Al-Alam television, Hezbollah's Al-Manar and Shiite channel Al-Albayt, which are all carried by Arab-set. Bahrain's political crisis has been the subject of a media war between pro-Iranian channels and Bahraini state television. Both have accused the other of incitement. Bahrain also condemned a protest outside the Saudi consulate in Tehran, after reports Saturday that some 700 demonstrators broke windows and raised a Bahraini flag over the gate. One Lebanese resident of Bahrain said Tuesday he had initially been denied entry to the country when he tried to return from a brief business trip. At least 1,500 Lebanese live in Bahrain, and a group of expatriates issued a statement Sunday, distancing the community from Nasrallah's comments. Bahrain's king said a foreign plot against his Sunni-led island state had been foiled, and the head of the Gulf Cooperation Council warned that interference by Shiite Iran in the Gulf Arab states would not be tolerated. Confrontation between Sunnis and Shiite has stirred international tension in the oil-exporting region, gripped by its worst unrest in years. An external plot has been fomented for 20 to 30 years, until the ground was ripe for subversive designs. He renounced the failure of the plot. King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa was quoted as telling troops, in a report by state news agency BNA, "Had the plot succeeded," he said, "it could have spilled into neighboring states." The king thanked troops brought in from fellow Sunni-ruled neighbors to help quell weeks of protests by mainly Shiite Bahrainis calling for political reform. Around 1,000 Saudi soldiers and 500 police officers from the United Arab Emirates entered Bahrain to protect government facilities during the unrest. Kuwaiti naval vessels arrived in Bahrain Monday to help protect its waters as part of a Gulf Defense Pact, Bahrain's state news agency said. It gave no details. Bahrain is the base for the U.S. Fifth Fleet, central to U.S. military power in the oil-rich region. Expulsions. King Hamad did not say who was behind the plot, but his comments came after a day of tit-for-tat diplomatic expulsions between Bahrain and Shiite power-run Gulf Cooperation Council (GCC) Secretary General Abdul Rahman Al Attiyah told reporters in Abu Dhabi, "We reject any intervention in our internal affairs, and among these countries intervening is Iran," after he was asked about troops from Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates being sent to Bahrain. Saudi-owned Al Arabiya television channel quoted Bahrain authorities as saying communication systems had been sent from Iran to the Bahraini opposition. The ferocity of last week's government crackdown, in which Bahrain called in Gulf troops, imposed martial law, and drove protesters off the streets, has stunned majority Shiite, the main force behind the protests, and enraged Tehran. Iran, which supports Shiite groups in Iraq and Lebanon, has complained to the United Nations and asked neighbors to join it in urging Saudi Arabia to withdraw forces from Bahrain. Bahrain expelled Iran's charge d'affaires Sunday, accusing him of contacts with opposition groups, a diplomatic source said. The Iranian ambassador was asked to leave last week. Iran expelled a Bahraini diplomat in response. More than 60% of Bahrainis are Shiite. Most protesters have campaigned for a constitutional monarchy, but calls by hardliners for the overthrow of the monarchy have alarmed Sunnis. Shiite across the region have complained for decades of oppression by Sunnis dominant throughout the Arab world. Bahrain's political crisis has been the subject of a media war between pro-Iranian television channels and Bahraini state media. Each side accuses the other of incitement. Mourners angry. An uneasy calm spread through the city as Bahrainis returned to work and there were fewer checkpoints in the streets, though helicopters still buzzed over Shiite areas. Shaking their fists and shouting "Down with Al Khalifa," about 2,000 people joined the fourth funeral procession in as many days for someone whose death during the unrest is blamed by Shiite on the authorities. Waving black and Bahraini flags, mourners gathered in the Shiite village of Buri to bury 38-year-old father of three Abdul Ruz al-Ajer, found Sunday apparently beaten to death. "We want to know the reason for this ugly crime, and who is behind it," said Yusuf al-Buri, his cousin. "Are people now getting killed for their identity? What is this country coming to now? Abductions? Beatings? Murder?" Another Bahraini Shiite who has been found dead after he went missing for days was also buried Monday. Police cars and military armored vehicles surrounded the entrance to Buri, but did not interfere with the funeral. Bahrain's largest Shiite opposition group U.A.E said police told Ajer's family Sunday to collect his body from hospital. Speaking at a 15-minute protest in front of the United Nations building in Manama Sunday, a former U.A.E parliament member said almost 100 people had gone missing in the crackdown.